It's good to be here. Happy Sabbath, everyone. It's a beautiful, beautiful day, and we have a lot to be thankful for. Now, I don't claim to be a preacher, but I can tell stories, and that's basically what this is. The best you can be. Have you ever wanted to be better? Have you always wanted to improve yourself? If you watch TV or listen to the radio, it seems like America is on a self-improvement kick. You can't turn on the TV or radio without being told you'd be better if you used their products. That just buying something will make you a better, more fulfilled person. Are your pants too tight? Join this gym and buy a treadmill or a stepper, or drink this miracle joy juice and the pounds will just melt away. Are your pants too loose? Have you ever heard of weight on? Do you sometimes have morning breath? Well, gargle with this mouthwash and you'll be better. Do you have tired blood? Well, there's always Geritol. Do you have trouble remembering things? You know, I understand there's even a pill out to help your memory these days, to improve your brain. Are you looking for love? Try this special perfume or this wonderful aftershave, and it will make you more attractive to the opposite sex. Now, I'm not knocking these efforts at improvement. And it's true that God wants us to be healthy, but there's a lot more to being the best you can be than physical improvement and attractiveness. God has outlined a plan for everybody can participate in, and you don't have to spend your hard-earned money. God has made each one of us special, and we each have special characteristics and talents. Now, we've all got different talents, and if there's one person who knows how talented you are, it's your mother. My mother has always believed I could do anything. A lot more than I believed it, quite honestly. My grandmother always told me you can do anything you put your mind to. But if you're a very shy, pigeon-toed, nearsighted kid, sometimes it's hard to believe. Now, I've been lucky to be raised in a home with a very special mother. Most of you are acquainted with Dan Dan, as my oldest daughter christened her. She's been Dan Dan ever since. Actually, she was trying to say grandma, but it came out damn. And Mother said, oh, no, it's Gran. And so it was Dan Dan from then on. You know, she wasn't a lot like other people's mothers. It seemed that my friends' mothers were always expecting them to do something wrong, or giving them orders, or telling them this, that, and the other, what they had to do and toe the line, what they should and shouldn't do, and what would happen to them if they did do it. But my mom managed to stay on top of things and keep us in line without threats. I think Ronnie and I behaved ourselves in part because we didn't want to disappoint Mother. I've tried to put my finger on what actually it was that my mother had that others didn't. And I believe it boiled down to the fact that she believed the best about my brother and me. She assumed that we'd do the right thing and didn't hound us about it. I know that she put us in God's hands, and she still prays for us and just about everybody else she knows every night. And even though we didn't always have an easy life, we worked together as a unit and maintained a very special commitment to each other. I believe that God created the family as a little picture of God's love for us. He believes that we can be the best and is standing by to guide us with each step of the way as long as we'll let him. God is like a benevolent parent. He loves us and has given us the power of choice, but he's always nearby to give us a boost when we need it. And if we love him, we will want to do his will so that we won't disappoint him. Now, this talk today isn't primarily a tribute to Mom, even though she probably deserves it. But it's a challenge to each one of us to be the best we can be at whatever we face on this earth. I believe that most mothers and fathers believe that their children have great potential and could do anything they choose to do. And if we're willing to put our lives in God's hands, the sky's the limit on what we can accomplish. It's not just in the activities of the church that we are going to be called to account for our commitment and Christian service. We must strive to excel in all aspects of daily living. Christianity isn't like a special outfit you set aside for Sabbath only, something you carefully put away after church until another week. Christianity must become an integral part of our personalities and lives. And that's not something we can do on our own. Only by allowing Christ to live in us can we be the best we can be. If you're a committed Christian, you'll be a better employee who will go the extra mile and put forth extra effort because you're working to the glory of God. You'll be a kind and thoughtful neighbor and take an interest in those around you because Christ's love is a part of your life. Your relationships with your family, your workers, your friends, your acquaintances will be dramatically affected by your relationship with Christ. Because being the best we can be through Christ, by entering into the Christian plan of self-improvement, we're going to be keeping our eyes on a perfect example, Jesus Christ. We become like the things we emulate and spend our time with. So if we're constantly in communication with Christ through prayer and Bible study, we'll become more like him each day. The world should recognize Christians not only by their religious fervor, but because of their excellence in daily living, their reliability, their honesty and trustworthiness, and their love for others, as well as their dedication to serving God. Being a Christian means being the best you can be in every area of your life. It's easy enough to spout Christian platitudes, but to really be the best, you have to have Christ living in you. These days, it's often said, and I've said it a lot, they don't make things like they used to. Unfortunately, this can apply to many things in our modern lives. We've reached the point where we really don't expect excellence regularly. If you purchase a new car, a new appliance or tool, you look carefully at the warranty, because regardless of what the salesman may tell you, you halfway expect something to break. Now, if you're lucky, it'll break down before the warranty expires, but usually it will develop problems shortly at the end of the covered period. I know this to be a fact. After nearly 58 years of marriage, I believe I've become something as an expert on non-functioning appliances. I've bought and disposed of washing machines, dryers, dishwashers, and vacuum cleaners. Not to mention blenders, toasters, can openers, and mixers. And I don't abuse my appliances. They just aren't built to last. The only one I've got I can really put my finger on that lasts is my KitchenAid. My KitchenAid mixer has lasted a long time, and it's still doing well. I don't abuse my appliances. However, the appliances I bought 50 plus years ago had a much longer lifespan than my more recent purchases. And I think if you think back, you'll probably realize that's the same thing. My first washing machine lasted forever. We're becoming accustomed to mediocrity in the marketplace. We accept the fact that today's mass-produced assembly line products probably won't become family heirlooms and be passed down from generation to generation and be revered. In fact, we're going to be happy if they last through the decade. We're living in a fast-paced, disposable society. Everything seems to be geared to a one-use, no deposit, no return, throwaway lifestyle. and it seems like there's not much tolerance to hang on to. Used to be, if something broke, you took it to the repair shop and they fixed it. Now it's cheaper to just toss it and buy another one. In fact, do they still have repair shops? I'm not sure. Things being what they are, what should the Christian's attitude be? Can we afford to be swept along with the tide of mediocrity surrounding us? It's easy to sit back and roll with the punches and live for today. But I believe if we are followers of Christ, we have to set our sights on Christ's perfection and thrive daily to become more like him. Now, by being a Christian may not make your washing machine last longer. It should affect the way you do things and your attitude toward life in general. My key text this morning, whatever thy hand findeth to do, do it with all thy might, reminds me of a quote I grew up with, and as Missy will attest, I spread it liberally to my children. Anything worth doing is worth doing well. The scriptures plainly point out that God isn't satisfied with less than our best, and he expects us to do whatever we do with all our might, and that's everything. That doesn't mean leave much room for mediocrity, does it? I can remember my academy days, that highlight of your life. High school was a wonderful time. And there were a few golden people, I wasn't one of them, who seemed to do everything well. They could talk off the cuff and not be nervous. They would sing solos and never miss a beat. They were athletic, scholastic, popular, beautiful, and constantly in the limelight. Whenever class officers were elected, their names were the first ones in nomination. When school activities were planned, they got to plan them. Those few people always got the best parts, much to the disgust of some of us less chosen class members. They seemed to lead charmed lives, and at the time, I must admit, I found it rather annoying. It was hard to sit back and watch a few people basking in all the glory. But now that I've acquired a great deal of maturity, I understand that those golden people probably deserved their popularity because they were willing to use their time and talents and improve their skills to provide the leadership our class needed. My little brother, Ronnie, was one of those golden people. He got to be president of absolutely everything. If there wasn't a president, he was the chairman. He was a leader in everything he did. It didn't matter what it was, Ronnie was up there doing it. And he still is. He's the provost of Loma Linda University, and he travels all over the world and speaks off the cuff and doesn't get a bit nervous. I didn't get that talent. But he put a lot of effort into it. He never went anywhere unprepared for what was facing him. If he had to give a talk, he researched it. If he had to give a presentation, he had all of his slides in order. He put forth the effort to be the best. Now, I've been to a number of class reunions. How many, I hate to mention. It's going to be 60 years next year. And most of those kids who did well in school were leaders, went on to become very well and did very well in their professions. There were presidents of universities, ministers, doctors. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember the Baby Faye surgery. The doctor that did that was one of my classmates. I mean, we've got some great leaders that came out of that class because they continued to put forth their effort. I'm sure you all have teachers you can think of that were a big influence in your life. One of my teachers was Margaret Plymire. She taught all sections of junior and senior English at Tacoma Academy. And if you graduated from TA, you spent 2 painful years in her class. She was a legend. Her reputation for awfulness was widespread, and most of us freshmen and sophomores were dreading her classes. It was almost scary to walk by her classroom door. It's true she was relentless and unyielding. If she gave you an assignment, I don't care who you were or what else you had to do, you did it. She was tough. She never let up on us even when we pleaded too much homework, sudden illness, or impending mental collapse. Death was the only excuse. Her favorite and oft-quoted phrase was, "Do the thing and you shall have the power." We learned to hate that quote. She refused to allow any utterance of a negative comment in her class. She kept a little bank on her desk, and if any of her students dared to comment, "I can't," or "I won't," she shook the bank and you had to put a quarter in it. We were sure that she was going to retire early on her ill-gotten quarters because she would not even, if you muttered under your breath, "I can't do it," she'd hear you. She'd hear you. But you know something? We learned. We accomplished it. She knew that we could do more than we thought we could. And believe it or not, at the end of 2 years in her classes, most of us had a pretty decent command of the English language. And everybody, without exception, had learned to write a passable research theme. That was her big thing. You wrote research themes. And that was before computer, folks. You had to go to the library and look at the little cards and copy things down on index cards. But we learned to do it. Now, one of my classmates, who was a good buddy, was a bright young man. His father was the president at that time of Washington Missionary College, and his mother was a medical student. I mean, he came from brainy people. His grades were good, but he didn't want to write a research theme. He figured my grades are big enough if I could just blow it off. The 2 days before graduation, he stayed up day and night writing a research theme. Mrs. Plymar told him, said, "You won't graduate if you don't write the research theme." And he did. He did. He said it was blank when he got it, but he did finally get his diploma. Mrs. Plymar didn't make life easy. She made us stretch ourselves. She made us try just a little harder than we wanted to. And she got results. Nobody was allowed to sit back and vegetate. She knew we could do more, and she saw to it that we did. You know, when I look over this church here, there are a lot of talented people. You've each got a talent. We have musicians. We have people with the ability to lead. We have marvelous cooks. We have people who know how to work audio-visual equipment. We have people who know how to use the computer to effect. Talented craftsmen. The gift of hospitality, which is a great talent. The gift of praying for others. There's something every one of us has a talent for. Now, we don't all have the same talent, but we all have talent. Whether it's 1 talent or 10 talents, God expects us to use them to His glory. We don't all have the same gifts, it's true, but we each have something. My mom's going to be 100 in December. Now, up until a few years ago, she would spend 1 day a week at a nursing home. She used a walker, but she'd go to the nursing home and she'd pray with the people there. She snuck them cookies, too, until the nursing home staff told her not to. But that was her mission. And she's very sad that she's not able to do it anymore. But she prays. She prays all the time. She prays for people she doesn't know. And she wonders sometimes why the Lord has let her live this long. but I've decided it's because she has so many relatives who need prayer. I'm quite sure that's it. Christ has promised to help us in developing our talents for Him. He wants us to stretch ourselves, to excel in life, in our work, in our homes, and in our church. Not so much to become rich and powerful, but to bring glory to His name. He's told us that we only need to ask for help, and it's available 24/7. James 1, verses 5 and 6 tells us, "If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering." And you can't get better than that. You just have to ask. In 1 Corinthians 12, verse 32, we're told to covet earnestly the best gifts. Always look to be better. Always strive to be the best you can. The Lord does want us to be successful in life. He wants us to develop our talents and abilities because He has a need for them to help finish His work. One of my favorite songs growing up, and I bet a lot of you remember it, especially you folks that are over 50. It was "Brighten the Corner Where You Are." I don't hear it sung that much, but it was one of my favorites. And in case you've forgotten the words, I'm going to read them to you. "Do not wait until some deed of kindness you may do. Do not wait to shed your light afar. To the many duties ever near you now be true. Brighten the corner where you are. Here for all your talent you may surely find a need. Here reflect the bright and morning star. Even from your humble hand the bread of life may feed. Brighten the corner where you are. Brighten the corner where you are. Brighten the corner where you are. Someone far from harbor you may guide across the bar. Brighten the corner where you are. You don't know what effect you have on people around you. You don't know whether a smile, a kind word, a glow track might just be the thing that someone needs, that God put you there for that reason. And I believe God puts us where He wants us to be. It might not be where you want to be, but God knows best. Just because God hasn't chosen you to become a missionary to headhunters in Africa doesn't mean He doesn't expect you to work for Him. Christ has a work for all of us to do where we are, and He expects us to do it to the best of our ability. And if our abilities doesn't seem adequate, He's waiting in the wings to give us a boost when we need it. Don't ever think you can't do it. God is just waiting to give you extra strength. He expects us to try to do our best, to push ourselves. I know you're all familiar with the parable of the talents, the story of the master who was taking a long trip, and he entrusted his servants with really big sums of money to improve while he was gone. To one servant he gave 5 talents. To another he gave only 2. And to a third he gave 1. So not all of us has the same amount of talent to begin with. The servant who had the 5 talents had doubled his investment. The servant to whom he had given 2 had also increased his yield. But the servant to whom he had given 1 had buried it in the yard and never put it to use. We're not told whether the servants invested their talents in the Bank of Israel, or on the Cairo stock market, or in the land where they worked. But they got to work and they did their best. They improved their original investment, and they increased their master's worth by their faithfulness. And the master rewarded them for their faithfulness by giving them more talents to use. So when you use up that 1 talent you've got, God's just liable to give you another one to get started on. But the servant to whom he gave 1 talent, he just didn't try. He wasn't willing to risk losing that talent for fear of failing. So he just hid it away until his master returned. He didn't even put it in an interest-bearing savings account. Maybe he was annoyed because the master only gave him 1 talent, though I understand a talent was a large sum of money. Or maybe he was just plain bone lazy and didn't want to put forth any effort and he was going to play it safe. But when his master returned, he was totally disgusted with the faithless servant and cast him out of the household. One of my favorite of Ellen White's books is Christ's Object Lesson. Whenever I have to do something in public, I look at Christ's Object Lesson because there's usually something there that can be adapted to any situation. Ellen White elaborates on the story of the talents. The man traveling into a far country represents Christ, who in speaking this parable was soon to depart from earth to heaven. The bondservants or slaves of the parable represent the followers of Christ. We are not our own. He owns us. The slaves were not free agents. They were his property. We have been bought with a price, not with incorruptible things, as silver and gold, but with the precious blood of Christ. All men have been bought with his infinite price. By pouring the whole treasury of heaven into this world, by giving us in Christ all heaven, God has purchased the will, the affections, the mind, the soul of every human being. Whether believers or unbelievers, all men are the Lord's property. All are called to do service for him, and for the manner in which they have met this claim, all will be required to render an account on the great judgment day. Christ's followers have been redeemed for service. Our Lord teaches that the true object of life is ministry. Christ himself was a worker, and all his followers he gave the law of service. Service to God and to their fellow men. Here Christ has presented to the world a higher conception of life than they had ever known. By living to minister for others, man is brought into connection with Christ. The law of service becomes the connecting link which binds us to God and to our fellow men. The story uses talents for illustration. Though talent was a considerable amount of money in ancient times, I'm sure that this illustration rings true for us today. Now, your talent might be making money, and that's great. But he's given you each a talent, perhaps more than one. But it's important to put them to work. Just don't bury them in the backyard. Whatever your talent may be, regardless, whether it's working on a car, cutting some poor lady's land for her, shoveling snow, not that we get much of it down here. There's so much each one of us can do to show God's love in this world. Christ is coming soon, if you haven't noticed. We need to give our best to God's work. We can't sit back on our laurels and bury our talents in the sand. Perhaps you've got a dozen talents. Maybe you've got just one. But God expects you to use that talent for his glory. He wants you to develop it to the best of your ability with his help. And then when you think you've stretched that talent to the breaking point, he'll give you the ability to stretch it just a little farther. Or maybe he'll even help you discover another talent that you didn't know you had. And it's surprising. In the many years that I have been in this area in the church, I've seen people who didn't think they could do anything become great leaders in the church. People who were so shy they wouldn't even talk to you, who ended up leading out. So don't ever think you can't do it. We must never limit God by saying, I can't or I won't. because with God, all things are possible. He may not have a fine box for you to put a quarter in, but I'm sure it saddens him when we fail to be the best we can be. Now, in the Pittsburgh area, and I think that a number of people from this church came, we finished an amazing evangelistic series over in Raleigh. The meetings were incredible. It was exciting. It was thrilling. And I understand that there have been at least 50 baptisms as a result of those meetings. We found a lot of people are anxious to learn more about Jesus and his love. We have a lot of Bible students that we're still studying with. I realize that in many ways our church is small, and a lot of people are getting older and can't be running around and delivering Bible studies all the time. But each one of you can pray diligently and encourage those who can do the work. Every one of you can pass out literature. Do you have glow tracts here in this church? Those little tracts, they have wonderful messages in them. Put a couple in your pocketbook or in your shirt pocket. If you go out to eat, leave them with your tip. If you send your bills out by what they call snail mail, stick it in with the bill. If you see someone looking sad, offer them one. It's an easy way to spread the word, and you can each do that. We can each pray for our friends and neighbors and ask God to give us the opportunity to share the great gospel commission. I don't know how many of you got to talk one-on-one with our pastor, but that man finds someone to give Bible studies at the laundromat, at the grocery store. He's tuned in to let people know that Christ loves them. You can do it too. Time is passing quickly, and this world's a mess. People are looking for something substantial to hold on to, and we've got a wonderful message of hope and a promise of a wonderful new world to share with them. Use your talent, whatever it may be, to let people know you care and you're willing to share. Don't be afraid to step out for Christ. And don't worry what other people will think of you if you stand for Christ. Now, I think that was my big problem when I was younger. I was afraid of looking foolish. I didn't want to do anything that would make me look like I didn't know what I was doing. And there's a lot of times I don't. But don't be afraid. Don't worry about what people think of you. Worry about what people think of your master. As Mrs. Plymire used to say, and I quote, "Do the thing, and you shall have the power." But I like to amend that quote as follows: do the thing, and God will give you the power and help you to be the very best you can be. Thank you. Shall we bow our heads? Our gracious and loving Heavenly Father, we have so many wonderful things to thank you for giving us the opportunity to be your witnesses on this earth, for giving us the privilege of sharing your love with a dying world. Please be with us, dear Lord. Help us to have you live in our hearts and help us to be truly the best that we can be.